Thank you very much, Honorable Matubego. Thank you very much, Honorable Prince. I'm used to saying Honorable Prince Sibanda, for the introduction. And seeing we are fundraising, I'm wondering if any funds have come up. But as I go through, as I go ahead, I'm going to be speaking on the barriers to entry for women in Zimbabwean politics. There are numerous barriers for women to participate in Zimbabwean politics. And most of all, I'll start with something that has just affected me or affected myself and various other women politicians in the past few weeks, which is violence. Most women are afraid of participating in politics because of violence. And in most spaces, women have been talking about violence, that there's just too much violence, and we've been encouraging women to participate and say, telling them, we need to stand up, we need to make sure that seeing we are, a higher percentage, 52% of the population is women, we should stand up. But when you look at what has happened in the past few weeks, where in Matopo we saw women that were involved in that political process, in the campaigning, Change Champion Nonhlanhla was beaten there, Change Champion Precious. These are women that other young women and women in the communities look up to as their mentors. And when they see them being beaten, how do you demystify and say that is not the case? 2-3 days later, myself as a member of parliament was beaten in Insiza. And not because they did not know I was a member of parliament. They actually asked me who I was. I introduced myself. I told them I was a member of parliament for Bulawayo Metropolitan. And they went ahead and beat me all the same, and beat all the other women, defenseless women, as you may have it. And not only, when I say they beat me up as a member of parliament, that does not go to say women or anybody else should be beaten. Women are brought up in our society and our community to be loving, to be nurturing, to be carers. And we are not brought up to be violent people. So this needs to be looked into by government. It's something that we need to fight against in Parliament. And when I say fight, I don't mean in the violent way that the ruling party has been doing it. So this is one of the barriers, and I thought it important that I should emphasize on this point, because it's something that is real, something that is topical. It's happening right now. As Sarah spoke to earlier on, that I suffered 2 fractures. Fractures on both my hands, besides being beaten all over my body. I have a fracture in my left hand. I have a plate that has been inserted. I now have a foreign body in my hand that will be removed after a year. My right hand is still healing. I have other champions such as Nonhlanhla and Precious, who suffered injuries. We have a change champion from Insiza, Gladys Moyo, a woman. There were men that were beaten, but we're speaking about women and barriers for entry into politics in Zimbabwe. So that really needs to be addressed. We cannot, as a nation, carry on in such a barbaric manner. We are supposed to be civilized. We claim to be the most educated nation, one of the most educated nation and nationals. How do educated people behave in such a manner? And if we are educated, how are we going to encourage women to come into political spaces if they are going to be beaten? So that is one of the main barriers that stop women from going into politics. Then we look at our cultural barriers, especially in the rural areas, and I'm sure this is no exception for Binga, where women have to seek approval from their families, from the husbands, from the mother-in-laws, from, in the rural areas, it's a community that actually, the cultural way of living, where women must or are not seen to be leaders or as leaders. Women are supposed to take instructions from their husbands, from their families. So we need to enlighten or make sure our communities are educated, and also women in particular need to be capacitated to see themselves as leaders. I say this because if you look at the mobilization that is taking place, and let's look at Binga, for instance, the majority of the mobilizers are women. And that in itself is leading. And yet officially, people will not want to give women that space to be leaders. So there needs to be a lot of education in that area of politics. And I think as CCC, it's an area that we need to work on. If you look at the fact that Binga has 25 councillors and only one of them is a woman. If you look at the lineup right now, the councillors participating in this by-election, it's all men that are participating. And okay, we can understand the fact in this current scenario, in this situation, we can forgive our party because these are candidates that were recalled. So we are actually putting back those councillors that were recalled because it is not the citizens that recalled them. Those were our councillors, and that is the reason why we currently have all male candidates. But if we look at the amendment bill that has come into place, which Parliament has approved, where we have 30% of women councillors, 30% of the councillors, it says that it should be women councillors. So that will address a bit of the current mischief. But we need to make sure, as a political movement in 2023, that deliberate efforts are made by us. Let's not wait for the current Zanu PF government to make those strides. We ourselves need to set the pace. We need to lead by example. We need to show that we do see women as very important in the political sphere.